All right. I call this meeting to order. Could we have a roll call as soon as the troops are in their seats?
Mr. Ackerson, Ms. Billman.
Here.
Mr. Feld.
Here.
Mr. Fitch.
Here.
Mr. Hopkins.
Here.
Miss Waitrago.
Here.
Mr. Turner.
Here.
Mr. Weisskopf.
Here.
Miss Yu.
Here.
We have a quorum. Are there any changes to the agenda? The minutes from the February 7th, 2019 Plan Commission, regular meeting. Any motions on the minutes? Mr. Hopkins?
Move to approve the minutes.
Motion by Mr. Hopkins. Second by Mr. Turner. Any changes to the minutes? We'll have a voice vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The minutes are approved. Communications.
None.
The only thing I have is an announcement at this time that this will be Mr. Turner's last meeting of the Plan Commission. He's moving to another town.
One really close.
Very near to Urbana. And so thank you very much for your service, and afterwards we'll have some cookies.
Absolutely.
So,
It's been a pleasure.
all right, thank you. We have no continued public hearings. We have no old business. We have new public hearings. First is Plan Case 2370 T19, an application by the zoning administrator to amend Article 2, Article 5, and Table 6 of the Urbana zoning ordinance to clarify the regulations of daycare home occupations and allow daycare facilities to be permitted in all business districts.
Yes.
Before Lily gets started, just to correct for the record, it's Table 5-1.
Table 5-1,
Thank
okay.
you.
Roman numerals.
Yes.
Table 5-1. Thank you, Ms. Wilcock. Please.
All right. So, as you were told, it's amendments to the zoning ordinance for daycare homes and facilities, and that's we're going to do a couple things. Well, we're suggesting and proposing a couple things to be done a little bit differently. So, part of the reason why the zoning administrator is requesting this amendment is in 2016, the zoning ordinance text amendment, Plan Case 2270 T16, revised home occupation regulations, Section 512, to be more flexible and allow more types of home occupations. It was a part of a whole omnibus that had quite a few changes here and there, and part of that was a really smart move, I feel like, upon the planning staff, in that they pulled out daycare homes in the home occupation regulations and actually discussed what those specific regulations would look like for a home occupation. Previously, there was really no mention in the home occupation regulations, and what that kind of felt like was if you were going to follow the letter of the law, it would make it very difficult for you to have any daycare home occupation. And I can get a little bit into that a little bit later, too, as well, when we're discussing the differences. So without specific mention of daycare homes in Regulations 512, daycare homes would be considered Type B by default, with only 3 visits allowed per day. 3 visits may not be enough for 2 children or 2 adults to be cared for in a commercial operation. Furthermore, 2 children is under the requirements for DCFS, which that is the Department of Children and Family Services, just for clarification, to license or recognize your business as a daycare home. So kind of makes it a little bit difficult. You would not even be a daycare home by DCFS's standards. Staff corrected this with their text amendment, and they added daycare homes regulations to Section 512 in 2016. Those changes add specific maximums for the number of children or adults allowed for each category of home occupation. Staff chose those maximums by considering the estimated impact to the neighborhood, but did not research other state regulatory agencies like DCFS and their practices when deciding how many children or adults should be allowed, or what state regulations or regulators would require daycare home operators. And I will say that we did a little bit of research into this as we delved into this, but there are quite a few daycare home operations in Urbana, and currently the numbers don't quite reflect what we felt like the home occupation regulations, the categories weren't really lining up. So we really started to take a look into what would make a little bit more sense. And so that's kind of how this proposal came to be. The proposed text amendment. Staff recently determined that the maximums that were adopted in 2016 differ from DCFS for daycare homes, which makes it difficult to operate a daycare home for children as a home occupation in Urbana while complying with state rules. A part of this is that daycare homes for children and daycare homes for adults are two different regulatory agencies, and DCFS goes a lot more into depth about how these things are occupied by the numbers. So we did pull those two definitions apart, and that was also a part of this background, was we decided that children are kind of treated differently for that. In addition, our current regulations do not specifically address exterior play equipment. This means that daycare homes are treated the same way as any other home occupation, and no home occupation-related equipment can be stored outside. DCFS strictly requires that all daycare homes for children have access to the outside and recommends play equipment in the yard. The proposed text amendment addresses this inconsistency. The last substantive change in this text amendment pertains to the definition of daycare facilities and which zoning districts they can operate in. Currently, daycare facilities are not allowed as home occupations. Staff feels that if someone has a large enough home on a large enough lot and the desire to run a daycare business, they should be able to apply for a Type C home occupation with the approval of a conditional use permit, which is a Type C. It's already existing. So it kind of makes it a little bit cleaner, a little bit neater, with very minimal change to the intent of the ordinance. In the proposed changes, the maximum number of children or adults allowed in a daycare home home occupation type B is 8. A resident that meets the stringent DCFS requirements could have more than 8 children with a type C home occupation permit and a conditional use permit. This would be considered a daycare facility, and the definition of a daycare facility has been changed accordingly. I do want to pull out that this table right here is not supposed to be there. Delete that from your
The one
minds
on
if you
page
can.
2, you mean?
Yes, page 2, yes. Under proposed text amendment, last bottom half of the page, it was a really, really good idea. I wish I could actually make a table that had this very cleanly, but if you actually dig into it, DCF regulations are not going to very neatly fit into a little box on a table. So that should be deleted. So mind that slightly embarrassing typo. Staff recommends that the Plan Commission approve the attached text amendment to close the gap between DCFS regulations and Urbana's home occupation regulations for daycare homes and facilities. The current regulations make it difficult for daycare home operators to comply with the city and DCFS, and proposed changes should eliminate that difficulty. And before I start going through the changes really fast with you all, I'd like to remind you that you have options. When I present these changes to you, you could forward this case with a recommendation to approve the text amendment as presented, so that would include it all. Forward the case to City Council with recommendation to approve the text amendment as modified, so keep that in mind when you're looking through this and I'm speaking to these changes. And forward the case to City Council with a recommendation to deny the text amendment. And as it quickly says below, staff hopes that that's not the case. So really quickly, let's go through some of these changes. The first one is Article 2 of the zoning ordinance, which is definitions. So for definitions, the current one for daycare home, and that's including children and adults, any facility in a home for the care of no more than a total of 5 children or dependent adults, including those of the proprietary, during all or part of the day of a commercial nature of a type commonly called day nurseries, nursery schools, or private kindergartens, etc., which provide essential personal care, protection, supervision, or training of preschool or school-aged children or dependent adults. A daycare home shall be considered a home occupation. proposed definition, and this was one that legal kind of helped us out with as well. A dwelling unit used during the day or night for the care of no more than 8 children, excluding residents of the dwelling unit for fewer than 24 hours per day. The term children has the meaning set forth in Section 5 of the Children and Family Services Act, which is something that's commonly referred to in other zoning ordinances as amended. A child daycare home is deemed to be a home occupation. If required, the operator must be licensed under the Child Care Act of 1969 as amended. And then we also pulled daycare home adult out of that definition as well, and kind of kept it to a little bit closer to similar, but with less references to the Children and Family Services Act.
Hey,
So
Lily,
it-
before you go on, I just
Yeah.
wanted to point out, it's my understanding that the definition of children, as DCFS puts it, involves family. So let's say you have one child in a daycare, that's counted as one child, but if they have a sibling at the same daycare, that's still counted as one child. So I just wanted you to understand that, so that if you hear if this is approved and you hear at some point that somebody has 9 children, it's probably because there's relations there. And from a zoning standpoint, it's very similar, or it doesn't have that much more of an impact because they're probably coming in the same vehicle, and that's usually the most impact on a neighborhood is the traffic. So I just want to point that out. And I wasn't sure, Lily, if you were going to go through everything, if Plan Commission has read through everything and doesn't need, that fine of a point, they might not need you to go through everything. So
Oh,
maybe
sure.
some direction on that.
Yeah, thank you. We did also update daycare facility, really to address the you can have a daycare facility as a home occupation if it's over 8 children, and that would kind of get you into that would change things as far as where you fall on the use table. So I'm going to just paraphrase. We also removed a definition of nursery. That's kind of covered by daycare home and daycare facility. And then we have Gloria, would you like us to go through the actual changes in the regulations?
How comfortable is Plan Commission with the summary as presented?
Many of them are just stylistic
I can paraphrase too. Basically,
substantive parts, I think.
yes, absolutely. So basically with these updates, I'm going to zoom in for...
Expand the,
Yeah, absolutely. No, I would have and I'm looking at this and I'm like, if I was watching at home, this would be rough. All right, we can get this. Yeah, how do I?
That little triangle down in the middle of the bar.
You're making this up.
Down, right.
What?
Right next to redact. Right next to redact.
Oh, redact.
The little gray thing that I'm pointing at.
God, if it was a snake, it would bit me. All right, so thank you. Thank you, you all, for your beautiful technical assistance tonight. Really fast, I'm going to summarize some of these things. For home occupation type A, if you have 3 or less unrelated children in your household, that would be considered a daycare home occupation children. Yeah.
That's not what it says.
I'm sorry.
It says fewer than 3.
Fewer than 3. I'm so sorry.
1 or 2.
Yes, 1 or 2 unrelated children. It is a business. It is a home occupation.
Fewer. So which is it supposed to be?
1 or 2.
Okay.
Thank you, Lou. No. Very much appreciated. So that is it's in line with incidental traffic associated with other occupations like private consulting, non-retail business, arts and crafts studios, internet-based businesses, telecommunication-based commuting. So that was a change. That is also to keep clear with DCFS regulations that we're kind of looking at. that would not be considered a daycare home for DCFS. But in Urbana, that would be a home occupation, running that out of your own private house. And we do change, another substantive change is we would like to propose that you can have exterior visibility to play equipment. And so for daycare homes are exempt from the exterior visibility provisions. Does everybody see that part here? I've highlighted it on the screen.
In that case, the wording here is different from the exterior visibility wording on the daycare facility. And I'm wondering if that's an intention. Because in this case, it says it's exempt from the exterior visibility provisions. The daycare facility.
So for daycare facility, that would be a home occupation type C. And I would say that we don't go into the details about visits, exterior visibility, signage, other things that we do for type A and type B, because that's considered a conditional use permit that would needed to be approved, and that would be covered in the permit application in the, yeah.
But now, let's see. The thing is for the type B,
Type B?
A and B.
Yes, A and B.
You're exempt from all the exterior visibility requirements.
Yes.
I thought for type C, or maybe for type B, it says with respect to.
And I'm going to scroll.
It says provisions to allow activities and equipment customary to daycare homes, such as outdoor play equipment.
Yes.
So here, it's specific to a specific kind of exemption. In the other case, it's not. It seems to me they should be consistent, unless there's some subtlety that I'm missing.
Uh,
I see what you're saying.
yeah, I see what you're saying too.
1.4 under, yeah.
On B.
And
So I would say that with the type A, if you have one or two unrelated children, and all these other kinds of home occupation type A, exterior visibility, I think that well, I forgot where I was going with that, but
Victor just suggesting you want the language to be
the same, yeah,
Right.
we can make those changes.
I actually doubt it makes much difference, because the kind of exterior visibility, if you've got one or two kids, is probably negligible. But I think it
Yes.
should be specific, because otherwise somebody's gonna say, well, I can do all kinds of things outside because of the daycare.
But then you'd still be limited to having no more than 2 commercial business vehicles, trucks, and it'd still have to be the same business. And
I understand, but
Yeah.
what we want to allow is the daycare-specific exterior facilities, which is .4 under, that doesn't make it explicit.
So we can clean that up, and in looking at this more carefully, I realized that we didn't do some of the underlined correctly. So some of this language is new, but is not underlined in my version at least. So,
That may be part of what's confused me, because in this, the part I'm referring to is not underlined under the text.
yeah, and it should be.
yeah, and it really should
So-
be.
It was something else.
If I may, if we could have the conversation, because I think it's pretty intuitive what it is we're adding, and we can point that out, but because what went to you is not correct, if you could, when we're done, continue the case, the public hearing, so that we don't need to re-advertise it, and then we'll get you continue it to the April 4th meeting, because the next one is going to be canceled. And then we will get you the final language with the correct underlines, to make sure that you're getting the right information.
Okay. I mean, I suppose obviously we could make that change now.
Well, I'm worried, well, I can look at it, I'm just worried that I might miss something and then it ends up being incorrect. But while Lily's continuing, I will do that and see if we can make that happen.
All right, so we just know that,
Okay. Thank you so much. And then I guess for as far as substantive changes, we changed a couple of words and a couple of typos, or made things a little bit clearer as far as like adding commas and of, or just a garage. And then we really get down to the table of uses, and there's a large change there, where instead of, so for residential uses, again, this is very important for being a type C, and us considering daycare facilities as a type C home occupation, it would be conditional use. And then for business districts, we're proposing permitted by right in commercial districts. B1, B2 are both districts that are kind of similar as far as they're a little bit of have a residential character, or they have residential uses. And then B3 through B4 are commercial uses, and daycare facilities. There's a lot of things that are permitted in B3 and B4 that would be very similar or complementary to that. And then for CCD, the nature of this district, zoning district, is most uses are allowed only by a special use permit. But for CCD, which is campus commercial district, that district would seem fine for to be considered as a daycare home facility under a special use permit. And CRE is also our conservation, recreational, and education. And as an institutional kind of zoning district, there is already daycare facilities that are operating around there, and it seems like it's a natural fit, especially in an education district. One of the most, and then so those are the only changes that we're proposing for daycare homes and facilities. Lori, do we want to continue this? Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I was wondering about your thinking on the CRE district. I mean, for it to be permitted. These are mainly parks?
Parks, and also the university property in schools. Those are all
Schools,
CRE.
yeah.
Yeah, schools. And I will say that, the one, very long operating as well, that I could immediately, when I thought of this, and it's not permitted at all, is the university laboratory preschool, and that's one that my dad went to. It's been
Sure.
around for a while.
Right.
So, and I thought, it's.
Oh,
I thought, as schools are allowed in this by right, it seems like daycare facilities may be too.
yeah, I was just thinking of parks. I wasn't thinking of schools.
yeah.
That makes perfect sense. I don't know why you'd have a daycare home in a park, but
Well,
That's a side
daycare
point.
facilities all summer, and
that's what I was wondering about the camps. Yeah.
I think Victory Park has a couple of residential properties inside the
Yeah, but
park
not for much
zone.
longer.
Yeah, that's very true. Super true.
That's I'm nitpicking, but I just had a question. Mr. Fell.
I have a couple questions. I should probably know this, but I don't. When did the DCF regulations kick in? How many
So
DCFS? How
that
many kids
act
do you
that's
need?
referred to is 1965.
I know. No, I mean
Oh, sorry.
the number of kids, or
Oh, I don't know that.
I thought the number was 3.
Oh, I thought you meant the date that it was enacted.
no. I mean
Oh.
the number of
Kick in, it's 3, sorry.
I don't patrons.
I thought
don't
you
know
meant
what
when
they're
did
called.
they change this, and I was like,
Okay, so they're regulating every daycare that's over 3, right?
unrelated children, yeah.
They have
Um,
lots of rules that I don't know how we cover, like
They
drop
do.
off. I mean, it's all kinds of things. So are
And
we?
I have a pretty good summary of that.
Well, are we
for
just
you.
sort of by right instituting those? Obviously, we are, right? If you have more than 3, you have to
Well,
comply with
no,
everything
so-
the
It
DCFS
refers-
has. So if
yes.
you can't meet their drop-off regulations or things like that, they're out. Okay, how do we proactively regulate that? How does the city not say you can have 8 people in this daycare and let them open it, and then DCFS comes in and says you can't drop off kids safely enough to let us license you?
Right. I don't. So I would say that they have a completely different set of interests.
Let me put a follow-up in there first.
Yes.
they need a commercial kitchen at a certain number of students. I
Absolutely.
don't know what that is either.
It's not
So-
8. It's over 8 for
Okay.
that. So there's really, seeing as it's a public interest to have operate daycare homes, actually the University Extension Office has a really helpful resource for understanding the nebulous and long and tiresome rules and regulations for running a daycare home. And so I pulled out some of those very helpful information. And there's stuff in here like you have to be certified in CPR, first aid. And yes, after a certain point, you do have to have a commercial kitchen. All of those would be, so a lot of them do drop off at 8. And so this is without having any assistant. And you can see in our home occupation, they're really dictated by what is the impact to the neighborhood and the surrounding properties is what kind of where cutoffs go for type A, type B, and type C. And once you have an assistant, you have potentially another vehicle drop by, and you also have more visits and drop-offs and cars visiting a property. And so at 8 children, we have that. As far as the facility concerns are, we do have the exterior visibility was conflicting with the facility operations for the commercial kitchen and other things that DCFS operates. That's not something that is under our purview of how the quality of the daycare. That's DCFS. I will say that DCFS does a very good job of doing this, and if they find that children are being taken care of in a commercial fashion out of someone's home, then they are pretty good. I've seen cases in the news where they were pretty good about finding that person and telling them to stop operating without meeting their regulations and also applying for an inspection. So,
Okay. What I'm more concerned about as a municipality is that someone, and maybe this is incorrect, that's why I'm at. This is a question, not a statement, right? Can someone come in and get their daycare license through the city of Urbana with 7 kids and get it all up and running, and then DCF comes in and says, sorry?
absolutely not.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, even if, say, all of the planners in community development services all move around to other countries or cities or whatever, it's all very much online. DCFS has the amount that they're qualified for and also the how many children they're qualified for, at what times
Right.
they're qualified for. And so it's very easy at the point of getting the home occupation application to check that. As a matter of fact, that's kind of what started this.
So the city's going to, I just want to make sure we're covered, for lack of a better word. So
Sure,
the city's
yeah.
not going to issue a license, I don't know if the city gives them a license for daycare, unless they meet all the DCFS regulations, or they have that approval ahead of time,
Well, the
or
type, let me jump
concurrently?
in. The
Yeah.
Type B home occupations require a certificate of occupancy. So as we're reviewing things, we can, Lily, when do they get their license from DCFS? Will they have that at the point that they apply to us?
Before the occupation, and I will say there's no right or wrong way of going, whether you apply for a home occupation permit first or whether you go through DCF first, but I will tell you that if you're not on the DCFS regulation website, which again, like I said, all of us in this room can go to their website and look at which ones are registered in Urbana or not. If they are not there, that would be the first red flag for anyone reviewing their home occupation permit. What I think you were asking is with the certificate of occupancy and whether we would be aware of all the DCFS regulations when we're going in there and looking at the space for a certificate of occupancy. That is not something that necessarily we will do, but that's something that they won't get their permit if they're not already applied for DCFS. So, super awesome question.
Okay, I have another one.
Oh, good.
You passed through this really fast. I haven't read this whole
I
ordinance.
know, I apologize.
And this is sort of another general question.
Yeah.
You can have more than one home occupation at a home?
Yes,
Yes.
because oftentimes homes are lived in by more than one adult that may want to have a home occupation.
Okay, we've, as a city of Urbana care that, I'll go into, okay, the the guy that fixes cars at his house. I don't know what
We
we
have
call
that,
that,
yeah,
right? He
sure.
can have 8 cars at his house, or I don't know what it is. They can't be visible from the front. I mean, we have a situation where
Yeah.
we could have a relatively small lot in town that has a home daycare that has 8 people coming to it, and a car fixing business that has 6 cars sitting in the backyard.
So there's a couple problems with that, though, in that, because the
DCFS probably will care, but
DCFS will definitely care. They care whether your outdoor shed in your backyard is locked or not. You
yeah,
know,
believe
those
me, I
kinds of
know.
things are very much involved in DCFS, and when they review the property and your application.
well, it's
for-
really not a DCFS question. It's a city question. Is this
I'll
ma-
refer you to Section 5-12, paragraph F. More than one home occupation at a single premise may be permitted, provided that the cumulative number of total employees and visitors do not exceed the restrictions set forth in this section. So it's saying as long as cumulatively, you don't go beyond our requirements.
And unless you have a garage that's absolutely massive, you can't have 8 vehicles at your house, because there would be exterior visibility.
Well, that was just
Well-
one example. I think
Right,
the point was
sure.
Right, that's, yeah, that's just
potentially
a example.
incompatible.
So
Right.
Right.
it is possible that you might have a
That's right.
home daycare and then an individual that does taxes and nobody visits.
Right.
See what I'm
Sure,
saying?
sure.
So the impact to the neighborhood needs to be within the total number of maximums
Okay.
that are here.
Well, that was my question, so,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
We got it covered.
All right, I have one more, which is sort of a nitpicky question, but it seemed like in your presentation, you kind of hinted at, we talked to all these daycare people, and this is what they do, so we want to fit our regulation to meet what they do. Is that what we did?
No, that's fair. That's a very fair comment on my presentation. No, what happened was we were working with people who filling out their home occupation permits because they wanted to get their home occupation permit, and what came up to we had this question about what does DCFS say about this, and so when we started looking into it, we found that. If you were going to follow our home occupations, when we set the maximum amount of children allowed in a home occupation in 2016 and the maximum amount of visits, they didn't really align with how DCFS was certifying people. And we were noticing that we were maybe making it really difficult to have a home occupation permit, have a home occupation and have a daycare home. And within our we'd have a problem with, is this really too intense on the neighborhood and the impact of it, or is this something that we just kind of set an arbitrary number and now we're fixing it and aligning it more with the regulations that are kind of already out there?
Okay. I'm done.
No, thank you. That was a really good comment about my presentation. Thank you.
Any
Andrew.
further questions? Ms. Billman?
The table 5-1, the last page, I don't know what all these abbreviations stand for. Could you add those someplace to the table?
Absolutely. So if you look at the zoning ordinance, it is always underneath the table on each page. And so I apologize for, that'll be added to
Okay.
future memo. But basically, C is conditional use permit, and that needs to be granted for you to operate in a residential zone. P is for permitted by right. S is for special use permit. And that covers everything in there. If you ever open up the zoning ordinance and you look at it, you will see the abbreviations are explained on the bottom of each and every page, which I think was part of that text amendment in 2016. Yes, see.
Any further questions?
I have clarification on which language we should have underlined. If you can bear with me, I'll take care of it now, and we don't
That'd
have
be
to kick
great.
this can down the road. Thank you for that suggestion.
Thank you, Ms. Wilcox.
Okay, so if you're following along on page 1 of the text changes themselves, paragraph A, which has to do with type As, what should have been underlined appears about halfway down, and it starts with daycare homes with fewer than 3. Should be underlined and was not in your memo.
Daycare homes with fewer than 3. Yeah, it's the fifth, it starts on the 5th sentence down and extends to the next sentence. At the end of the 5th sentence down.
Okay, if You ready for the next one?
So the-
Yes, so
the
this right
daycare,
here.
Stewart and three should have been underlined.
Correct.
Yes, so that's new language.
Yes, thank you. Then moving on to paragraph 3 under still A, but if, Lily, you want to scroll down to 3. This is this is where we can tweak exterior visibility and make sure it's correct or consistent between the two types. The last sentence should have entirely been underlined.
Beginning with daycare homes.
Daycare homes are exempt from the provisions, all should have been underlined. Then moving on to type B, home occupations, paragraph 3. There's some deleted language, and this is regarding customer-client visits. Basically, after, with no more than 3 visits present at any one time, there's what formerly was a sentence that we're proposing to strike, which read, daycare homes shall be allowed a total of up to 5 children or dependent adults to be cared for on the premise at any time, which shall not be counted in the limit of customer-client visits. We're basically trying to clean up that clunky language.
So you struck that, and here it looks like it's been entirely deleted, so
Correct. And then this new language, starting with excluding, should all be underlined to the end of that paragraph. So new language reads, excluding daycare home pickups and drop-offs. The zoning administrator may require a drop-off zone as a condition of approval for the home occupation permit based on demand generated by the use, safety, and on-street parking supply.
yeah?
Then there's one more, paragraph 4, and again, we'll look at the exterior visibility. We should have underlined the last sentence in its entirety, reading, daycare homes are exempt from, we already got the exterior visibility, provisions to allow activities and equipment customary to daycare homes, such as outdoor play equipment. So we will make that consistent. We will add that extra language about the outdoor play equipment to type A to make sure that
Same sentence.
Yeah.
they're identical. Yes.
This is the good one.
The outdoor play
Yes.
one, you like that?
Yes,
Okay,
that's better.
we will
Cool.
do that.
Great. With no further questions, I think we can go into discussions or any discussion or even a motion. Any discussion? Any motions? Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we move Plan Case 2370, is that the right one? 2370-T-19, an application by the zoning administrator to amend Article 2 definitions and Article 5 use regulations and Table 5-1 of the Brandon zoning ordinance to clarify the regulations of the daycare home occupations and allow daycare facilities permitted in all business districts to be forwarded to the City Council with recommendation for approval.
Motion by Mr. Fell.
With, how do I word this? With the sentence that Lou wants added to every place he wants it.
Well, as amended, because I did present a revised staff
As amended, right.
recommendation.
Okay, as amended by staff.
Seconded by Mr. Turner.
Does that include adding an explanation of the abbreviations on the table?
That's already in there, so it's not necessarily a part of this text amendment, but for reading clarity,
Yes.
we will
okay.
put that in there.
All right, thank you.
Any further discussion? We'll have a roll call vote when you're ready.
Mr. Fell?
Yes.
Mr. Fitch?
Yes.
Mr. Hopkins?
Yes.
Ms. Wadrago?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Weiskopf?
Yes.
Ms. Yu?
Yes.
And Ms. Billman?
Yes.
Motion passes. Do we have a date for city council for the TV audience?
I think we're going to take this to the April 1st meeting due to some staff absences, and there's no rush.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. And now we have Under new public hearing, Plan Case 2373 PUD 19 and 2374 PUD 19, a request by Chris Saunders of 1007 West University LLC for preliminary and final approval of a mixed-use PUD at 1007 and 1011 West University Avenue under Section 13.3 of the Urbana zoning ordinance. Those two cases will be continued to the April 4th, 2019 Plan Commission meeting. New business. We have one piece of new business, which is the annual approval of the updates that were made over the last year to the zoning map. That is Plan Case 2372 M19. Well, Ms. Wilcock?
Welcome. This is the new zoning map. You can also see it online. And there's an interactive zoning map as well to go with it. The links are in the packet on the back page. We had a number of cases this last year. We have an annexation case. That would be Union Gardens, which is east of Oak Street, north of Bradley Avenue. So that has been added to the zoning map right here, up in the corner. That was rezoned from County IN2 to City R4. We have a slew of other rezonings. So we go to Green Street where, okay, cool.
Thank you.
Lots of them. Yeah, anytime.
I could remember most of these.
Yeah, there's definitely some memorable ones.
Yeah, it
in
was a
there.
big year.
Yeah. And so that's been updated. You'll also see a couple of subdivisions that have changed. I will also say, just as a new staff person here, some of the subdivisions don't get updated right away because they go through the county's GIS network and then to ours. But you'll see many of the ones out in the county are changed instantly. Vacated right-of-way, that does show up on the map this year, and so we had quite a few of those. Most memorably, one that was approved in 1977. That's been approved and added to the map. It's pretty good.
Mr. Hopkins.
That was, as I read the list,
Yeah.
that was vacated in 1977 and is only now being put on the map?
It's only now being approved. I definitely had a couple of eyebrows raised too as well, and I asked our absolutely amazing surveyor at Public Works, what's the story? And I have his email in case you're interested, but he basically said it was approved in 1977, but it never got passed or forwarded to council, I believe, until this year. Well,
Okay.
this last year,
Okay.
2018.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Alley vacations, it just sounds funny to say, but yes.
Yeah, it was signed by Hiram Paley.
It could be quite
so-
memorable, yes, an alley vacation, right?
Yes.
Not like going to Hawaii.
Alley versus valley.
Planning Commission is lively tonight.
And so, should I mention the options?
Right.
Yes. You have two options. Recommend approval of the proposed 2019 zoning map as revised and updated to the Urbana City Council. I think it says official 2019 zoning map because that's what we call this map. Recommend denial of the official 2019 zoning map as revised and updated to the Urbana City Council.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Nope. One, Ms. Ray Dargo?
Yeah, just to, back to the alley from
Yeah.
1977.
Sure.
So east-west alley on the what? Of Busey Avenue?
Oh, good catch.
Oh, yes.
It's just or was a word
It's,
missing or something?
Yeah, there is East-West Alley. I'm trying to.
We'll figure that out.
Yeah.
Correct it for council, thank you.
All right. Well, any further questions? No? Thank you very much. Any discussion on the zoning map? Any motions on the zoning map?
Okay, I'm going to move
Be my last.
I did.
I'm going to move that we recommend to the City Council approval of the official 2019 zoning map.
That's Plan Case 2372 M19.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Turner, second by Mr. Hopkins. Great. Any further discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Fitch?
Yes.
Mr. Hopkins?
Yes.
Ms. Wedrago?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Weiskopf?
Yes.
Ms. Wu? Are you? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Ms. Yu. Ms. Billman?
Yes.
And Mr. Fell?
Yes.
Motion is approved. And so we're looking at early April for the council again?
No, actually, this has to be approved by council by the end of March.
Oh, okay.
So we're asking council to take final action at their March 18th meeting.
Great, great. And then we'll get a copy soon after that?
Yes.
Thank you. Audience participation? No? Is there a staff report?
Just to report on the previous case that you heard, rezoning and special use permit at Lincoln and University, both were approved by council.
Thank you. We don't have a study session, therefore, we are adjourned.